Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Sarafian. I'm going to be sharing my action research project with you. So let me just get my screen set up. Okay, so my question was, what influence does place value knowledge have on a student's basic addition and subtraction skills? Okay, so some background knowledge. The student is 6 years old and in first grade. She does not have any disabilities. She comes from a two-parent home and they both work. Her parents are pretty involved. They help her with her homework, and they had already reached out to me for some help with her math anyways, besides this project. All of our sessions were done on Zoom since her family moved. They used to be my neighbor, so I have a pretty good relationship with them. So they don't mind. Her name is Penelope. They don't mind if I share that. They know that I did this. So she did miss some of her critical math time last year during our state shutdown, because they did move to Florida at that time. So like she missed the last several months of her kindergarten year. I mean, it was done, virtually a few days a week, but in my opinion, I think she missed some of that critical math time. And then because they weren't officially Florida residents, she couldn't enroll at the beginning of the school year. So she was homeschooled for the first few months. So I think that had a big impact on where she is in math. I did speak to her mom about what she was working on in school, and I looked at some of her work, and that's how I decided to focus in on how place value could help her with her addition and subtraction. And her parents were pretty good. Like her mom would send me what she was working on, and I would look at it so that I could plan for what we were going to work on together. So the purpose of the study was to help improve her basic addition and subtraction capabilities by expanding her place value knowledge. I wanted to show that with the implementation of certain interventions and tools, her fluency in 2-digit to 1-digit addition and subtraction problems would increase. I also wanted to see how her ability in these types of problems would change over the course of our time working together. Okay, so as far as the literature review, the first thing I looked at was called Using Place Value to Teach Addition and Subtraction. Let's count the ways. And there was a quote in there that said, by simultaneously teaching addition and subtraction with place value, the student can begin to learn the language that mathematics offers us. This can be seen in the ideals of teaching 2-digit numbers as some tens and some ones, or teen numbers as 1, 10, and some ones. Place value should not be taught simply as a vocabulary lesson, but used as a tool to teach addition and subtraction. And then in this article, it looked at place value, number line, concrete, pictorial, symbolic method, addition and subtraction facts to 10, teen numbers as 1, 10, and some ones, higher addition and subtraction facts within 20, and 2-digit numbers as tens and ones as some categories of steps that you could follow in a unit for mathematics. And then it did focus in on the concrete, pictorial, symbolic method, which is something that I worked on with Penelope. So I'm going to explain that. So as for that method, it starts with concrete objects or manipulatives. And this is important because any student, despite their reading level or language ability, can do this. They're able to discover patterns in numbers. And then after the concrete models, they move on to the pictorial or the picture part. So when I was working with Penelope, we would do that with using a whiteboard and dry erase markers. And this can be used with students who are struggling with reading. I wouldn't say that she's struggling with reading. I think she's like pretty much on track, might just be a little bit like one level below. But there's some of the words that were in word problems and things on her homework that even if she couldn't read it, she could still, if I read it to her, she still understood. So the pictorial part could help students transfer their thinking to paper. And then this step continues to help students understand how numbers combine together to build other numbers and how they can be taken apart. And then finally, the symbolic portion. This helps students have a better understanding of the first 2 steps, and they're able to move everything onto paper and pencil work and mental math, kind of put it all together and explain their thinking. Another thing is that this article pointed out how it's natural to think of a letter as part of the alphabet, but that it's not very common to think about the understanding of numbers with place value and the base 10 system. It gave some examples, and it also talked about when a student has a deeper understanding of the place value concepts, they'll be able to move on to more complicated math concepts later. And then also talked about how using hands-on materials and manipulatives for students to hold and move is better and more beneficial for tactile, kinesthetic, and visual learners. This helps students that have a low reading ability to be able to participate in the lessons. They talked about using things like bears, dinosaurs, tile pieces, and base 10 blocks. And then also it included so many sample lessons, and I thought it was pretty useful. And then I have one other thing for the literature review. So I looked at something called Teaching Place Value is Important. And it talked about the importance of conceptual understanding of place value. So then there was a quote that said, place value is perhaps the most fundamental concept embedded in the elementary and middle school mathematics curriculum. Place value provides the foundation for regrouping, multiple digit multiplication, and more in the base 10 system, as well as a starting point for the understanding of other base systems. And it talked about how place value has a positive correlation with overall math achievement. And then it did say, research has shown that there's a correlation between using base 10 manipulative representation of numbers and understanding place value. So an example being, like if you're given the number 24 and a student represents it with 2 base 10 blocks and 4 units, rather than showing 24 individual units, then you can tell that they have a better overall understanding of place value. Okay, so for the methods, when I first started working with Penelope, I took an initial assessment on her 2-digit to 1-digit addition and subtraction problems. And I am gonna show you a little chart later on. And we worked together about 2 times a week. Like I said, she had moved, so everything that we did was on Zoom. We worked for about 45 minutes at a time. We mainly used a 100 chart. She likes to call that a number hopper, base 10 blocks. Like I mentioned, her parents were pretty proactive about making sure that we had what we needed. So she had her own set of base 10 blocks, dry erase board, things like that. We also used skip counting. We did try the number line, but we did not have, Penelope, I'm sorry, did not have as much success with that. And then as far as we would do the skip counting together, when we were not working together, because she has a iPad and things like that, I also had her do some skip counting songs that I've used with students in the past from YouTube. We did work on that concrete pictorial symbolic method that I discussed from the literature review, and that worked pretty well when we did that. And then I did just show a little place value mat. We would do that when we work together to kind of separate the different units. So because I was working off of what Penelope was working on in school, we did, in addition to our own problems, we would work on a portion of her homework packet because they were working on place value. So sometimes in there would be like applying the knowledge of what you were learning into other things like word problems. So even though, you know, her reading may not have been exactly as where it was for the word problems, when I would read it out loud, we would be focusing on pulling out the keywords and things, and she would use her base 10 blocks and other materials like her number hopper to help her solve the problems. Now, as far as the 2-digit to 1-digit addition and subtraction problems, I gave some example problems right here. We typically try to stick to problems that were in the 30s and below. She would occasionally want a challenge problem, but I didn't want to do something too high for her. And then I would also often try to use problems with similar digits if she could find an association between the numbers. And like you'll see one example that I listed there was like 10 plus 4 and 11 plus 4. And she would notice that, and she would say like, oh, I know that there's only going to be a difference of 1 in the answer, because she noticed how close the numbers were. And I didn't put a picture of the number hopper or the 100 chart, but like I said, her parents know I'm talking about this, and they took a picture of her there with her little hundreds chart for me to show you guys. So that's kind of what we used. All right. So like I said, we worked on our place value skills in our sessions together. One thing I wanted to add was that when we first started to work together, sometimes she was unsure about the tens block. Like she wouldn't just know that when she picked it up, it represented 10. So that was something that we focused on in our first few sessions. Like she would want to count and make sure. And also, I didn't put that here in the discussion, but I also wanted to add that with her addition and subtraction, like counting on was something that was a challenge for her at first. Like she wouldn't just know that she had a 10. Like I just mentioned, she'd want to count and make sure. So counting on was also something. The number hopper or that 100 chart was her favorite thing to work with. She had a good success with it. Like I put an example, so circling something on the chart, working on going 10 up, 10 down on the chart. When we did the number line, it was okay, but it just wasn't as effective. When we used the place value blocks, she had her own set. It allowed us to do that concrete pictorial symbolic method, like I discussed in the literature review. Definitely using the hands-on tools. It helped her explain her thinking after we do a problem. And I'd say like, well, how did you know? Like she would use her place value blocks and she would be able to show me exactly what she was thinking. And then even like when we first began working together, like when she would want to use more ones blocks than necessary, as opposed to, using 10. And I would have her explain her thinking. She did begin to realize after a few sessions, like how it was easier to use the 10 and have a deeper understanding of that. So I did say that I noticed she was starting to have a better understanding of place value after a few of our sessions together. I started to see her addition and subtraction scores improve. And this was evident from her homework packet that she would get, that we worked on some problems together each week. I would keep track of how many problems she was missing each week. And I had this chart, which I couldn't really fit here, but I'm going to show you a PDF in just a second. And then her fluency was improving after just a few of our sessions together. Just a second. Let me pull up that PDF. Okay, so I did make this to kind of chart what we were doing, Penelope's math progress. So we did this for 5 weeks. When we first worked together, I wrote down what we worked on, her score, what we were using, notes, what we were going to do next time. So I took an average of her score of her 2-digit to 1-digit addition and subtraction problems. When we first were working together, an average of the first week, she was missing 5. And by the end, she was missing either 0 to 1, but I put average of 1. And like I said, we use the number hopper, place value blocks, skip counting. And then I would put notes for what we needed to work on the next time, what we were going to do next time, if there was anything we needed to do more, things like that. So I wrote down everything that we did, and you can see that here. Okay, so I'm going to switch back. Okay. All right. So we worked together for 5 weeks with multiple sessions in a week. Penelope made great gains in her fluency of basic addition and subtraction. And again, this was 2-digit to 1-digit. And as I discussed earlier, we tried not to go above numbers that were in the 30s, as I wanted her to have a better understanding. But every once in a while, I'd give her a challenge problem. And I already kind of said this when I just showed the chart where I was collecting the data, but in our sessions during the first week, she missed an average of 5 problems. By our final sessions working on this, she was missing, sometimes she wouldn't miss any, and sometimes she might just miss 1. My student was more successful when using manipulative, the hands-on place value blocks. I just think overall that worked the best for her. She did with the number hopper, the hundreds chart, that was nice too. Because it was just easier to show, moving up 10, down 10. It was easy to show groups of 10 in the place value on the number hopper chart, as she called it. I wanted to add one student versus multiple. So this was something that I had commented on in my paper. From reading the Sager book, they did say that, it would be best for an action research project to try to, have different variables and have more than one student to test your theories. And because this was done on Zoom, I obviously wasn't able to try this out with more than one student. It suggested having a control group to compare results with for an action research project. So since this was taking place during the pandemic, it made it more difficult to have a control group. And I did the best that I could with my research participant because I did this on Zoom. It was a bit challenging at times, but I took a lot of notes. And like I said, her parents did a great job ensuring that we had everything that we needed. And even in between our sessions, like I said, working on some of those skip counting songs and things like that. So they were pretty supportive of this. Yeah. So overall, I think that this did work well with my student. She made some great gains in her fluency. And I think that it did show that the answer to the question would be yes. I think that, improving upon their place value knowledge does have a good impact on basic addition and subtraction problems. And then here's my references. The first two were those from the literature review, and then the Sager, our book that we used for the action research project. So thank you.